Hi everyone, welcome to another Nature Walks video. I'm up in the meadow today, as you can see, looking rather lovely in the middle of May. And I want to show you a plant that I've been keeping an eye on for a while, but it's just starting to come into flower, which I think means it makes it a bit more easier to show you and a bit more interesting. So I'm just going to sit down. This is it here. See, it's got these beautiful yellow flowers. And this is it not in flower. But I'm going to show you this one first because you can identify it just by its sort of leaf shape. It's quite an amazingly unique looking plant. So it's what we would say has opposite alternate leaves. So you see here that these two leaves are opposite one another perfectly, and then the next one up the stem, if I just twist it gently, you can see that they are opposite but in the other direction. So north, south, east, west, north, south, east, west, sort of crisscross like shape. And the leaves themselves are pretty distinctive too. I always think they look a little bit like a saw. You know, they've got these very serrated looking edges on a very, very thin, otherwise leaf shape. So quite a nice easy one to identify, and particularly if you see it in flower, it's also quite a nice easy one. Big bulbous base to the flower with these little yellow lips. So if you haven't recognised this flower yet, this is what we would call yellow rattle. Otherwise called the Haymaker plant. And the reason it's called the Haymaker plant is because it's usually only found on what we call an unimproved meadow, which essentially is what we would call our best of the best wildflower meadows. So it means that this grassland here is managed in a sympathetic way to old hay meadow style methods. So it doesn't get cut in the summer, it goes right to the very end of summer, so either sort of late August or early September ideally, and then it gets one cut. The grass is left on top to drop its seed, and then that grass is taken away. That's our sort of typical hay meadow management that we get going on. And this will only grow in those types of meadows because it's an annual plant, which means it has to complete its life cycle in 1 year. So it goes from seed that it will produce during the summer, it'll drop, and then produce this plant in the early spring. Now the reason it's a really cool plant is because it's a parasitic plant. So the reason it's called a haymaker is because it's one of the common plants that people want in their garden if they're trying to create a wildflower meadow. Because the problem with making a meadow is these guys here. This is the grass seeds. So this is all the grasses that grow up. And they block out the other wildflowers that are trying to grow up through. They're too dense and the wildflowers can't get through. And the reason this plant is so good is because when it germinates, its seed produces these roots that tap into the roots of the grass, and it draws 60% of this grass's energy into its own flowering stem and uses that to germinate and grow itself. So it's a really cool plant that parasitizes the grass, which is great if you want a wildflower meadow, but also then produces these lovely flowers. These flowers are really important for bumblebees. Bumblebees are the main pollinator of yellow rattle. It's called yellow rattle because when it produces a seed pod and you shake it like this, it produces a rattle sound. And that used to be a sign for when the farmers who had hay meadows would want to cut their meadow. It means that it was ready and prime for it to be cut. But you can see no rattling noise coming from that one yet because these flowers have only just appeared. But give it a sort of a couple of probably a month, maybe 6 weeks, and you'll start to be able to hear some of those rattles as we come towards the end of June into early July. So you can see there's lots of it. You can see lots more of it sort of growing at the back there. It's a really cool plant to keep an eye out for. So if you're out in any sort of grassland area and it's been allowed to grow up, have a look, see if that flower's in it. And if you're interested in producing your own meadow, this is probably the most important flower that you try and get into your meadow. As I said, it's an annual meadow plant, so it means that you have to put the seed in the ground that year, and every single year it will produce seed, drop that, and that's what will produce the new plants. So if you cut it too soon, then you'll lose your yellow rattle from your field. So yeah, it's a great plant. Keep an eye out, and hopefully you can spot one. Enjoy!